Okay.
Awesome. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Other Paperwork this week. So, a few weeks ago, we did rehearsal reports, performance reports, pre production reports, etc. So, we thought we would touch on other paperwork that you can use as a stage manager and show you some examples of what we use. We will go through those and give you an option to see some of the different things that we do. As we do, and I'm sure many of you probably already figured out, a lot of us find things that we like, that we use, we share with each other. Sometimes you may come across a theater that likes to do a list, tracking report a certain way, and you'll be using that particular format. But most of us kind of develop our own just by our personalities and how we work and what works for us. So sit back and enjoy. I'm going to start off with my rehearsal report. No, not sorry, not rehearsal report. Rehearsal schedule. As soon as my screen sharing comes up. Ingrid, do I have the option to screen share? I should, right?
Yeah, hit screen share at the bottom. Is it working?
It's not coming up for me on my iPad so that I can screen mirror. Let me try again.
Yep,
Never done it on an iPad, just my Mac.
I did it last time and it worked just fine. I don't know why it's not working this time.
Technical difficulties. Yeah, you do have host capabilities right now.
Yeah. That is strange. Let me try this. Okay, I think I got it.
There we go.
Yes, there we go. And here we are. All right, so some people like to do like a calendar with blocks. I do that separately with everything on it. This is what I usually send to my actors, my designers, director, etc. This is actually only part of the rehearsal schedule. What I do in the beginning is send from day one all the way through to the end if I know that we have a closing date. If it's an open-ended show, then I would send through when we open. And then I take off the week we finished on our off day, revamp, and resend it. In this particular case, you'll notice that there are several things that are highlighted in yellow. Those are changes that were made from the previous rehearsal schedule that they received. So that immediately clues them into, oh, that's a time change. We've added a possible afternoon rehearsal before first preview. So they know that that's different. They need to pay attention to that and make those changes accordingly. Every time I update, in the upper right-hand corner is my updated date so that I know I'm currently looking at the most recent thing that I have. Always subject to change, of course. It's a rehearsal schedule. We all know that things happen and things can change. This particular instance, we were going back and forth between a rehearsal space and actually moving into the theater. So also under subject to change, you'll see that I have starred there paying close attention to where we are so that the actors don't end up in one place when they should be another. For the first few days where we knew in tech when our calls were and basic layout, that's been given to them. And then on the daily call, I break it down even more, and I'll show you that shortly, with exactly what we're doing and who's called when. And then as you can see, it goes through the rest. This was a show I knew the closing date on, so they know it goes all the way to the end. If this was sent before first rehearsal, you would have from first rehearsal on, so that it has all of that information. So this is a different show, but an example of my daily call with date and again, location. And I try to give as much detail and location as I can on the daily call so that if they're just glancing at that really quickly, it's all right there. This is for a reading I did recently. The daily schedule is there for the reading. This happened to be the day that we were coming in, touching up and finalizing what we were going to do in the actual presentations. And there were 2 presentations that day. I also have my phone number and announcements as well as at the bottom corner, so it's easy to find. And then the chart down at the bottom with call times. That expands, of course, when you have multiple call times in a day, when you have meal breaks, etc., so that everyone knows what their schedule is like. This is an example, just a basic example of a scene breakdown. This is for a new show that I worked on about a year ago. And this particular show, because it was a new show, pages were constantly changing. So we would update and I would highlight when we updated what the page numbers were, but it was also a good way to track. We had one character that was on almost all of the time, as you can see, Elle. But then we had some sequences where just Vern was on with a monologue sequence. So we needed to be able to quickly glance at what those pages were and what scene numbers those were if we just wanted to rehearse with that particular actor. Because I do a lot of new works, I deal a lot with script changes. This is my script change form. Again, up in the upper right-hand corner, it's updated, so you can see what the latest update was. I keep a running tally. That way, if an actor misses a script change and they go, oh, I didn't get that change, it's still there for them, and I can refer them back to that or point it out in the script. I get the newest ones in a highlighted color. I like to use red, but I always ask at the beginning of a process if anyone is colorblind. My son happens to be colorblind. He can't see green, but he can see red. So that's one of the reasons I use that. But the common ones that you cannot see are red and green. So I always ask if I have someone that is colorblind, I ask them, what colors can you see? I had an actor once that could only see black, white, gray, and certain shades of blue. So that narrowed it down very much as to what I could use. So I don't just assume that they can't see red and green, which are common. If they say, yes, I'm colorblind, I do ask. And as you can see, then it's easy to look at and say, oh, these are the lines we changed last rehearsal. I need to make sure I hit those lines. Those are the important ones. And then hopefully they review and make sure they've got the other script changes. I also have, and this is, I have to look at my list, there it is, a pre-show checklist. If you know me, you will recognize very quickly this is my pre-show, post-show checklist because it is highlighted in purple. Purple is my favorite color. I always make that announcement in my introductions first day so that people know that if it's purple, it's important and it usually belongs to me. I have a purple backpack. I carry a lot of things like a little mini purple stapler so people know those things are mine. And it kind of like clues them in as we go through the process. Oh, that belongs to Lisa, or that's important. This particular pre-show checklist, post-show checklist, has a lot of detail. If you'll notice at the top on the pre-half-hour call, because we had a certain way of turning on breakers, projection computer, lighting console, etc. I did this not only for myself, but I had a playwright that loved to come in early and turn things on. And he turned things on in the wrong order one night, and we had a lot of trouble, and he was very stressed. So to alleviate that problem in the future, I made sure that I laid this out on the table in the booth. I also kept a separate copy in my stuff so that if he wandered off with it, I had a second copy. But this, he could look at and know exactly how to turn everything on. He could check off how he turned things on so that when I arrived, I knew where I stood. So that I find very helpful. And then of course, it's modified depending on where I am, what I'm doing, and how difficult the show is. Going from there, I also have this is a pre-show checklist. This I borrowed, stole, however you want to put it. No, I borrowed it from one of my team members, Carolina Arboleta, who loves to play with color, as you can see, and does a great job with this particular checklist. And this one is actually modified for a show I did recently. The show she and I did together had tons of food and drink props. It was a very prop-heavy show and a very food-heavy show. So we had to do a lot of preset of food, getting things out of the refrigerator, making sure things were set the way they're supposed to, liquids, etc., and then making sure that was all put away safely at the end. So you can see how that's set up. I left it with liquids and foods at the top because that is something that can make someone sick if you don't deal with liquids and foods appropriately. I like to keep that separate, as does Carolina. And then what your preset is off stage, on stage, and then what shifted at intermission. Again, this is modified a little bit from what I would normally do because I had someone who is not a theater person coming in to help shift things at intermission for various reasons. So I wanted to make sure that we were very, very specific and clear. For example, down at intermission, if you look down the move on stage, we had a rug that had to be set a certain way. So we had spike tape on the underneath side of the rug. So that was the upstage side. And then there was spike tape on the rug to set a table. There was a time early in the process of performances where that rug got shifted in the wrong direction. And it wasn't set up correctly. So the spike tape was downstage instead of upstage, which of course changed the spikes on the rug itself. So the table that was supposed to be set on the rug was set incorrectly. After the show, I was like, that's not set correctly. and they were like, what do you mean? And I was like, we didn't set this because the spike tape was downstage on the rug instead of upstage. So something that we always had to remember to do and make sure that was set correctly. And the last thing I'm going to show you are my line notes. This is an example of how I do line notes. So it's a little checklist, character on the left, what's the page number, the line. You'll notice there's several lines that have a bold section. So if they dropped a section of the line, I bold the drop section just so they know this is what you forgot instead of it's just you dropped. Because you can drop an entire line, but you can also drop part of a line. So I think it's a little clearer to an actor if they drop part of a line to give them the line and let them know what part they dropped. So it just clicks a little faster, and I think it saves a little time for the actor as well. So those are some examples of some of my paperwork, because we all have a lot we're going to get to today. So I'm going to pass this along to Lizzie, who is going to show you some examples of hers. And then if you have been with us before, you'll see that Taylor is not with us today. So Taylor has pre-recorded just for you. Then Lizzie will share Taylor's recording after she shows some of her paperwork.
Am I able to screen share?
Hold on a second.
Okay. While you're taking care of that. I have so much paperwork because I PSM'd so many shows over the course of my career that I just chose a few of my favorites because a lot of this is going to overlap, and because I do PSM and call so many shows, a lot of it is calling scripts, but we're going to save that for another episode that's going to be specifically for how you call shows and calling scripts specifically. So when Lisa, excuse me, is ready to make me the host, I will
I'm trying to.
No worries.
There we go.
We're all patient here.
There you are.
Here. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So the first thing I am going to screen share, let me just pull that up, is a daily call I have, I think from last fall, for a show I did in a bar. It was an immersive show I did in a bar. Fun, interesting, different, but you still need your paperwork and everything to get you through it. I make it very simple. Like Lisa, I do ask if anyone is colorblind because not everyone can see certain colors. Everyone in my cast could see red, so that was fine for important dates. I also italicize and bold depending on what it's needed. And I just make it pretty simple. Address, show name, something specific in the notes. Who needed their headshots to someone that day, prop list. The cast was pretty responsible for their own costume and props list on that show. I kind of made them their own individual ones, which I can screen share later. And I don't always do full names. I just do initials. They know their names, unless it's someone has the same exact name, you know, but, and then you have to do certain initials, like maybe get a middle name in there. And I also, something I picked up a couple years ago working on a show that I was an assistant on is putting upcoming in there. Just kind of, yes, I make a production calendar depending on the production, but this helps as well. Just kind of not everyone's looking at the production calendar every day. So, and then I put questions. I've always put questions on my paperwork. I always put subject to change, like Lisa and most professional stage managers do. And my contact information. Occasionally I work on a show where the producer likes their contact information in addition to mine on the daily caller report. That's fine. This person didn't particularly want that. It's just one producer I work with always likes it, which is fine. No big deal. Yeah, so let me stop screen sharing. Let me pull something else up. This is my run sheet, and I sometimes make one for rehearsal with this. I'll just show you the tech one that I learned to do in Google Drive, which I do give to the actors and everyone that needs one. It's just easier to digest and easier for me to look at while I'm running the deck, which I don't do often, but for this show I was the deck stage manager and or the assistant stage manager. You guys see that? Okay, good. So yeah, I just make it, again, I ask if anyone has certain color, no one had issues with green. And I do put full names on this. It's just easier for the run sheet. Character, costume, time, you know, off stage, on stage, and, you know, just keep it going. And yeah, it's very long, but printing it out, I think it was only like 4 pages, which is not that bad. I know that could sound like a lot, but I once did a show, I think we had 18-page of run sheet. The play didn't make any sense. I don't even think the playwright realized what they were writing, to be honest. My paycheck cleared. That's all I cared about. It was a long time ago. But yeah, I keep it very simple, to the point. What else I got in here? Tech plot. This can be easy and simple to read for especially designers. This has all the lighting, video, and sound, which for most one-person shows I do, there's always video and sound. Usually not just one or the other. I like to put colors. Some people don't. I once worked with a stage manager and he hated colors, so I had to eliminate my colors. But for me, I like purple too. It's a fun, just kind of happy color. And yeah, I keep, you know, I always, and I do the versions. So this is actually really important. You can have, when I do corporate events, I can have sometimes 30 versions of the same paperwork. So that's what that little V indicates. So that's just version 1, because for this, it wasn't a complicated show, Hi Hitler. But make sure you're always making versions and that you're saving it on your Google Drive, what version is, or Dropbox or desktop, however you're sharing with people, Microsoft Office. That is very important, because it's, especially like the show I did that where I had an 18-page run sheet, we went through so many versions of a 4-day tech.
Hey, Lizzie.
Yeah?
So right now, I'm only seeing like your screen share started to wipe away and it's frozen at the moment. So I'm not seeing anything about like your tech thing. The last I'm seeing is half of the run sheet.
Thank you for telling me that. I appreciate that. Here, let's see. Now can you sit? Okay, good. Thank you. We're all learning Zoom 6 months later. But as I was saying, I do color, I do the version down here. That's just a preference. Yeah, so make it as simple. And I also just keep in mind, because I like to print things out. A lot of people do. Something that you can is easily printed out. And Google Drive is great for that, and so is Dropbox. Okay. I also have a medical info sheet. This does not have anyone's personal information on it. It's completely blank. But you guys see that? No? Better? Good? Good. Yay. You know, very straightforward. Something I will be adding, which I hadn't in the past, but next time I do an in-person production, pronouns. We know need to have pronouns on these things. So that is something I need to add. Name, pronouns, date of birth, your local address, physician's name, your phone number, allergies, medication. Definitely ask if someone wears contacts during performances. Very different. I also ask that for the crew too, stage manager. I don't personally like to wear contacts while I call a show or deck stage manage. If I do, it's just on opening night because I want to look nice for the party after. But rarely do I do that because it can bother me. It can be itchy and bother, and I don't want to have to deal with that while running the show. And this is something I keep private in my binder where no one else can see it, just for me. But it's, of course, important to have. What else do I got to show you? Oh, line notes template. Yeah, that's a good one. So some people hate doing line notes. I love doing line notes. They don't bother me at all. I made this simple thing years ago. You can see it's from 2014. Very simple. Name. There's a key. I put their name. You know, so this is for Billy. What the date was. Sometimes I do color. Sometimes I make it bold. Just depends on what's necessary for the person to learn their lines the best way. And then I think the last thing I'm going to show before I play Taylor's video is my script changes. Again, very simple, little key on top. I don't always put color on this. I don't think it's, for me personally, I don't think it's necessary. But I just do the boxes, you know, and I do a lot of new work. So depending on the show, it could be longer, it could be shorter. And if they're still missing the line as we continue, I don't necessarily take it off just until I hear them getting it accurate in the room. Do I take it off? And then I have a screen breakdown. I did want to show that off. I do a lot of readings. I don't always do this for full length, but for readings, I will do this. It just helps. Some people do French scenes. I've worked with directors that like that. It's not as common anymore, but some people, it helps them. It's just a traditional one. I tend to, it just helps. A little easier to help streamline and digest, especially for readings and workshops when your casts are big. I've worked on readings that can have 30 to 20 people, and this just helps, especially when they're playing several different characters. But that's all the paperwork I'm going to show for now, and I will share Taylor's video with you guys. Let me just take my
I guess I can't turn my camera off, right? While I'm screen sharing this, or does that not? You're muted.
Yeah, you can turn your camera off while you're screen sharing.
Oh, okay, great.
Mm-hmm.
Hi everyone, I wanted to share with you what some of my paperwork looks like when I'm working on a show. So I'm just going to share my screen with you.
Oh.
Okay, so this is for A Midsummer Night's Dream. I have the actors' names redacted so that we can't see them. But that's what the first column is. And then next to that is their character name. Some of them have, they play more than one part. So that's why there's two things there. And then above that, we have, at the very top, we have the act number, and then below that is the scene number, and then the pages is the pages that scene takes place on in the script. So what you see next to the character column is that I have, again, some of the actors played more than one character. So those that did, I have their character names written out per scene that they're in, and then those that didn't, it's just an X near their name. And that shows me who is in what scene and on what pages. So that helps, especially during the rehearsal process, so that you know who to call that day. If you don't need everybody in the room, you shouldn't have to call everybody to the room. So that's really where that comes into play. It's most helpful for me. And for the director too, they can see what exactly the breakdown is and who they have to work with for that particular scene. So for that, and then we're going to call up Miracle on 34th Street. And this would be an example that the one that I just showed you is an example of a character and scene breakdown. This is a character entrance and exit plot. So again, the actors' names are redacted, but this shows you we're in Act 1 here. This is a 2-act play. I'm just going to show you Act 1 for now because it's long enough. So at the top there, you've got the scene number and then the pages in which that scene takes place on and the setting that scene takes place in. And yeah, in this particular script, the way the pages were written out, it was just as you see it here. So what those numbers mean in the first column for scene 1, that's pages, that is Act 1, Scene 1, Page 1, through Act 1, Scene 1, Page 7, and then so on. That's how they broke it down in that particular script. Pagination was kind of interesting for that show. And then you've got the character names that are below, or that are next to the actor names, and you see the page that they enter on, and then where on stage that's happening, and then the page that they exit on, and where on stage that's happening. And that's how I break that down. This is obviously just a blank one, so you're not seeing all of it, but you would just write down the page number, and then they're exiting stage right or stage left or upstage, wherever they happen to be going. And so that's the entrance and exit plot that I had for that to work off of. And I find once you have a template, the rest just follows easily. It's the initial work that that takes the longest. And then I've got my we're going to take a look at some of these. So we're going to start with, this is again for Miracle on 34th Street. We had a couple of flies that came in, and this was just a short list of where those flies were coming from, where their actual ropes were. So our garlands were, both of those were stage left. Our isolation room actually wound up changing the stage right. This was all, a lot of this is preliminary work that I'm showing you that took place in the rehearsal room, and some things just changed once we got to the space. The swing was staged right, and we actually cut the chandeliers because it just didn't work out right. And then there was another solo practical that we were trying to figure out whether or not we were going to use it, and we wound up not using it. So this is what a blank prop track looks like for me. And then that translates to, and again, this is just, you would add the show name, and if they give you a logo, you would add that as well at the top. Who's directing, who's stage managing as well. This is what a prop track looks like for me once it's at least mostly filled in. Again, this was early. This was mostly a rehearsal piece of paperwork that we were working with, and this can help you with your prop preset list, which I'll show you in a second as well. Because at least now you have a singular piece of paperwork to go back to look at where your props are starting and where your scenic elements are starting, whether they're on or off stage. So we had the brownstone that started off stage. 2 of the crew members were moving that. And these notes over here, a lot of it was either a note for me for when I was doing the crew track later. I would add this in, and then it also shows, I use the notes section to show what's happening to the prop or the scenic piece while it's on stage, if it's changing hands or something like that. And so you'll see that in a little, on some of these as we go farther down. But again, this breaks down with the page number and what the prop is, what cue that prop is moving in or off on, or up on stage, off stage, or being handed off on, where it's entering from, where it's exiting, and then the notes are just that. They're notes that you can take for yourself. And then I put what act and what scene number below that the prop is happening in. So yeah, here we had a lot of things tracking at once. There was a lot of, we had instruments. It was, the beginning of the show is very quick. There's a lot going on, and it kind of calms down a little bit in between. But yeah, you see there's a lot of different things that are moving off and on. Some are hand props, some are scenic elements. This particular quick change, this was a quick change, where you see the clarinet cymbals and trumpets. The clarinet sax was just because we hadn't decided who was getting what just yet. That got decided once we actually got the actual prop in hand during the show, during tech. And again, all of these notes were cues on where things were happening and who was handing them off and whatnot. So yeah, this is the basic look of what my somewhat finalized prop track looks like. And this is where prop track helps. Also, you can start your prop preset list based off of that track. And if you take good notes to begin with, then that will follow through to the rest of your paperwork. So we had a lot of stuff on stage right on the prop shelf. Just a lot of stuff stage right in general. And then in the wings, they would start sometimes. And again, it shows you what the prop is, where it's starting, and then I will separate stage right, stage left, and on stage or upstage. Because in this, we also had a crossover that was upstage of our psych, or of our drop rather. Yeah, this is the upstage crossover. So we had a lot of storage up there because some of this stuff didn't come in until Act 2 or later in Act 1. So we didn't need it to be able to grab it immediately yet. And then that's the basic breakdown of what my prop preset list looks like. And some of the things would start in the dressing rooms as well. And for that, you see the space in between. I just put that space there so that I knew it was a different dressing because all the stage right and stage left things were pretty close together. So you didn't have to worry about moving to different spaces too much to set those. And then for this show in particular, I don't always do a spike tape color list, but in this in particular, because we had the moving parts, we needed it. And these were not the true colors that we used during the show. This is just something that I kind of mocked up so that I could show you right now. This show took some doing to try to make sure that when you're doing your spike tape colors, you want to make sure that when you have to duplicate that, if you have to use more than if you have to use the same color for more than one scene in a different space, I try to make sure that they're not close to the previous scene's use. And you'll see what I mean. We had to reuse some of the same colors for different locations on stage, and that's just the scene number and what color the spike tape is and what it's being used for. So in this case, scenes 1 through 4 were really all the same thing, or they didn't have moving parts in them. So I didn't wind up using the colors. I didn't put the color for every single scene. But as you can see, our Macy's toy department was a big one, and that got its own color specifically because it was used most often in the show. And then you're going to see some other colors that are reused again in a moment once I get to Act 2. So we had this light green previously in Act 1. This light blue was also previously in Act 1. So I just tried to make sure that
Sorry, I gave a bad suggestion. Can you unmute yourself, Lizzie? Thanks.
Sorry, what?
Hit play again. Sorry, I gave a bad suggestion.
I should stay unmuted, right? Okay. I thought.
Spike check during my pre-show. And then my next bit of paperwork is the crew track. This is just what a blank one looks like. You would have your title of show and your logo, if they give you one, and you can put the director's name and the stage manager's name as well below that. But this is just the page number that the movement is happening on, who's moving it, when it's being moved, where it's going to, and what it's being used for. So this is what the filled out version of that looks like. Again, this is when all of this stuff is happening, basically. So at places here, Stephen would give Jamie, who was our Mara, over stage left, he would give him the bottle in the brown paper bag. So that's pretty much what it does. Dylan was, when one of our actors came stage right, he would then hand off the walkie-talkie and the clipboard to him. This actually wound up happening during a quick change, but it happened still over by stage right 3. And I try to write myself out of tracks as often as I can. You will see there I am. I couldn't write myself out of this because there was just too much going on. Because I like to try when I'm in ASM to watch as much of the show as I can. And for this one, I was able to watch a fair amount of it. But again, and I put the page numbers from the script in here. Crew is not going to look at that necessarily. That was for me mostly, just so that I knew when things were supposed to be happening and make sure that we were on track during the show and not behind, because you don't want to be behind at all. especially when there's things that are happening quickly. And this, like I was saying before, this parade scene, a lot of things happened quickly. There were quick changes, which that's written to the name, and handing off of actual instruments that you wanted to take care of because they were someone's personal instruments, and they were still practical instruments. They were still in use for him at home. And I like to put the act number and the scene number and then the name of that scene. For this show, for some reason, the name of the songs were not sticking with me, but the locations that the scenes took place in were. And that's okay to, you don't always have to put the if it's a song that sticks with you, that's fine. But just keep it consistent. Yeah, like I said, the locations of the scenes were sticking with me more for this. So that's just what I used in this case. So you've got act 1, scene 2, parade route. This is all happening backstage as stuff is going on stage, obviously. Act 1, scene 3, during the parade. This was a lot of movement for us, both crew and actor-wise, because we were trying to reset things that had been handed off. We needed to get them out of our hands as quickly as possible. And I'm a fan of, once the prop is done, if you can put it back where it started, go for it, because that saves you during your preset the next day. It takes a little less time to go through your preset if the prop is already there. So again, this is on pages 16 and 17, I was handing off in stage right, wing 1. I was catching binoculars and a clipboard from Doris, and I was handing off bunny slippers and the purse to her. And that was a pretty rapid change. And then as that's happening, there's also a desk that is getting into its next place for the scene that it needed in it a little bit later on. So yeah, that's pretty much what some of my paperwork looks like. And I don't know where I'm going to be, where they're going to put me during this thing. So I hope you enjoyed the other ladies' paperwork as well. And again, you can do, this is just what works for me. As long as people are able to read it and make it legible, then that should be fine. And also I should say, on my crew track, I print it single-sided, and then on the back people can take notes, and I leave room in the margins for people to take notes, because I don't want to take up too much paper to have it be that for notes section. So I don't leave a particular note section for the crew. They can just do it, like I said, in the margin or on the back of the page. And I do encourage my crew to take notes, because that crew track is changing. And then if you need that to give to a sub, they need to be able to read it. So I will collect from my crew after tech is over, and sometime during that first week after we've opened, I'll collect my crew's track from them and just put in the notes that they put in, because again, this is all preliminary stuff. Once you get into the space and you're actually doing it, there might be prop handoffs that you're not doing. If you have a very self-sufficient actor, they might just grab their own stuff, and that's perfectly fine. I always like to put in the handoffs just in case. It doesn't necessarily mean that they need to happen, but they're there so that the crew knows this is something you might be doing, but if the actor likes to take it themselves, like we had our Chris Kringle, he would grab his cane and his hat every single time. Most of them did that. Again, if it was during a quick change, that's when we were most used to do handoffs, because they just don't have time to grab another thing. It's called a quick change for a reason. They got to get back on stage as quickly as possible. So yeah, this is, again, it's all preliminary stuff. It changes throughout, and you just want to try to keep it as up to date as you can, so that, again, if you have a sub coming in, they can read it. The sub will likely track whoever it is that they're subbing for a while, but still, that paper helps. And that's what it's there for. And if they want to do a remount of a show, they can, that's a jumping off point too, if you're working on it again. But yeah, I hope you enjoy the other ladies' paperwork. And if you see something you like of ours, ask us if it's okay to use it, and we'll send you what we can. Yeah, we're here to help also. Thanks, guys.
Okay. Now Ingrid is going to talk. Do I have to remake you the host? Okay.
So what I spend a lot of time and prefer to be the ASM. So what I'm mainly going to show you is something similar to what pretty much everyone else has shown you, is my version of the run sheet, which actually I do a document that kind of combines a lot. So I'm going to screen share this. And it's something I didn't actually figure out how to implement the function of until just before all of this, this video today. So I learned about this from attending the Broadway Stage Management Symposium, like an idea of it, of not only tracking what the crew will do, but also what cast members may do, especially if they are moving props or they have entrances. A lot of shows I do and love to do involve actors moving set pieces or things of that nature, or it's a very complicated prop show. Like Peter and the Starcatcher is probably one of the biggest complex prop shows where you're making so much of the scenic design and the locations based on props that keep getting used again and again. For us, we considered the crates part of that. So there were, I think they built us 10 crates. We didn't use all 10. I think we ended up using 7 or 8 of them. And we gave different letters to all of them because of how they would have to track. So with that, the actors knew which crates to grab, and we knew which crates. I eventually knew exactly what the crate was without looking at its letter, just because of being the ASM, I got used to those. But being able to track those and know who had them, where they were, not only when they were on stage or off stage, but when they were on stage as well. This became particularly helpful during the show because before we would even be able to do understudy rehearsals, which would be hard enough without external understudies for Peter and the Starcatcher, since it is so ensemble based, we were able to take the sheet and pinpoint exactly what the particular actor who was out did, and along with the director, cover those essential things in about a 2-hour rehearsal, which is pretty intense for a show that moves so quickly. Yes, it has scenes, but in Act 1, those scenes, like there's so much that happens, particularly in a section at the end of the show, scene 10 called Hurricano, where things are moving constantly. It's like 16 different scenes in one. So what I'm going to show you here is I use it as base mostly for creating my crew sheet or my run sheet, but also with the actors in here. So this is all based on using filters. As you will see, I've highlighted here at the top of the screen in the middle. So as I'm going through rehearsal, I'm putting everything into the sheet, like entrances, exits, moves backstage, anything that involves a prop or just an actor crossing or breaking the legs. So there is that. So you see at the beginning, I list, in addition, as kind of a reinforcement to what the props preset is, exactly like what should be done almost in a specific order, and it is assigned. So it can kind of reinforce a props preset list. Here's every single crate, exactly its spike, or if it's on top of something. We tried not to use too many spikes in the show because otherwise our deck would be a sea of spikes because of all the different locations we had, and we wanted to be able to reference it off certain things. So here's all that. I typically, like Taylor, would try to write myself out of tracks as the ASM, but I would also make sure I noted when I specifically had to watch moments, like lifts, fights, things of that nature, moving pieces. We had a rolling crate, people gone on and off, so I try to watch that as much as possible. And I made sure to write that in so that I'm at least hitting that. And if I'm watching I developed watching certain other things by habit, but they weren't as necessary for me to watch for safety. You will see I have some shorthand over here. Here are all of the different shorthands I used for the actors. I don't know if this was the same as the PSM, but at least we knew who we were referring to. So if an actor was playing multiple roles, it was 2 capital letters, first name, last name. If they were primarily one role, it was a capital letter, lowercase letter. So here we have, that I have highlighted, Molly, Aster, the capital is Philip, ST is Blackstash, and then the ES is another actor. Here, again, we have Peter, who is one of the main characters, one of our actors, Amara, Zach, I forget who, Alex, then Smee, who is pretty much a principal character consistently, Diego, and Nick, who have more. Now, as you can see here, we also had to track the curtain speakers because there was consistently an live curtain speech at this theater. We didn't know who was going to be sometimes until 15 minutes before the show, so there would just put curtain speaker in there. Here I kind of break my idea of shorthand when I'm actually in the who does it column and use just the actors' names. So you see, here's where they all enter, exactly when the cue is, if I know it, sometimes it's a little different, what props they come on with. So here's the bit of the functionality of it comes in for me. I think it's right here. Technical difficulties with this sheet. So if I go to the very top of the spreadsheet, I click this filter and I can filter by exactly which person I want to see their track. So say we're going to show exactly what the crew would be doing. So I'm going to unselect all. I know who the crew was. Would be these people, as well as myself. And then I also put blanks in there because in order to sort for my scene separations, I just have a blank in that character spot. So I put the blanks in there so I know where the scene divisions are, which can help, especially when working scene by scene in tech. So there we go, sorted through that. And now we only have crew movements, no longer actor movements. And then I can break down even further. If I wanted to track a specific item, I could by releasing the sort here and then just sorting for specific things in like the what section. So if I was searching, like, say I wanted to track pineapple, which is a big thing in this show. So I would just search pineapple, and there I have all the pineapple things in there. And I would see all of that, but I'd probably also do a dual sort, which helps me immensely through the show. From there, to just create the paperwork, I would then print it to a PDF, and I could distribute as I needed to the particular people. For the crew, I just made everyone in the crew and have the general run sheet that way so we know what we're tracking. It is a little bit smaller, So it does help to learn to teach it. The show is fast, so you almost couldn't be looking down at your run sheet during a normal show. Like, you had to learn it pretty quickly. We did have several subs during the show, especially in the crew. So with that, I would particularly, it happened more on stage left where I was positioned the most. I would spend the most time with that person, and we kind of created crew assignments or locations based on that. So we knew that there was 2 crew members for the show beyond wardrobe, to Deck and myself. Taylor happened to be the other one, running props runner on stage right, so she was by herself. We knew at that point that Taylor would probably be taking over, so it would be our PA jumping into that, so we would know exactly who needed by themselves. I think we also had an idea that the crew member on stage left would be subbing out, so I did stay on that side, so we had that balance of stage management mindset on each side. Quick thing of how to create this with anything. Again, you're going to go to the data section of Excel. I'm using Excel for Word because I am a PC user and have been most of my life, except with a little dabbling in Mac. God bless you, anyone who knows how to do the shorthand on both, because I am still learning. But for this, you will type whatever the column you want to be. So I'm going to just say example. And then from, that already had my filters. Let me delete that. So let me put it here so you can see it not automatically put in. So I'm gonna put example there, hit filter, and it creates the filter. So say A, B, C, D, and now you can sort by exactly what you need. The rest of it, the shading, is just a function of the table. So you can create like a table. This one happens to automatically go alternate gray, white, which makes it really easy to follow your line. My confession, I actually got the template initially from this with another ASM I was working with and loved it so much, I asked to borrow it and have been using it, customizing it ever since. So the ideas kind of all came together. One last example of functionality of this is also if you are distracting the actors, an actor's movement. So we will go back to here. I will unselect there. We're going to track one particular performer. I click there. Obviously, this person does nothing. I don't track what they do pre-show backstage. But here we go. Here is this person's first entrance, what they move, when they exit. So if like they're moving a trunk off and they're exiting at the same time, it's the same row. And then you would have, I would also note like if it's passing to someone else on stage as well. So there's that. I've done it for a couple of different shows. A recent one, I will also at the bottom put preset pictures, specifically if it's a very detailed preset, as a lot of ones are, with like where specific things need to be in a fake garb, which I've done before. We had to be super specific so it's easy for them to get, specifically with these shows where they are so much actors move the props and are responsible for being able to get to their own props. So there's that. The other thing I do a lot is line notes as an ASM. I actually don't mind doing line notes and script changes with a PSM that I've recently formed a good relationship with. We've already worked together twice and we're interested in working together in the future. She comes from a more dancer actor background, so she remembers blocking so much better than I do. I am kind of bad at that unless it's tied to a prop and bat logic, but I'm a little bit better in I don't mind handling like script changes, doing line notes, because I do like to give that feedback and be in service to the actor, and like that, the lyricality or the musicality of lyrics or words is something I find immensely helpful in learning the meaning of it. So here's what I do with line notes, which is pretty similar to what everyone else has done. However, because of going back to a particular theater multiple times and working with another PSM multiple times, and the staffing we had on one of the teams, one of the biggest problems I ran into with doing line notes was the time it took at the end. So I, with my line notes, will underline in my script what wasn't quite correct and do a shorthand on top. So like a called for line, it's either CL or C4L, which has been similar with 2 different PSMs I've worked with over multiple shows. So I don't reinforce what was said, the wrong thing said, but the right thing said. And then from there, I go through and type that all into a spreadsheet with each person's name and character name, because sometimes they're playing multiple characters, so they know like, okay, it's this line for this character, not quite right, look at them. But after that, it involves sorting and putting them into emails and sending them. So a particular, actually, intern that I was working with 2 years ago now happened to be transitioning back to theater from working in tech, I think it might have been Google, and developed a program, which you see here, that already had the functionality where you can just type in a little bit of information and beyond the line notes, and it automatically filters and sets up the emails for you, which made it a lot simpler for me. And of course, I used it with, like, she freely shared it with me if there was any updates like you wanted to put in, go for it. So here are the instructions. The info we would have to put in is all here, like the show name. She knew the shorthand. If you were sending it the next day of when the notes were done, you could date override, set the basic template and all this info. Obviously, I've deleted personal information, but in there I would have that. And here are all the line notes it would do. We would be able to sort by a particular code, which was a shorthand that she and I had worked with in our summer together. The good thing about this is once you do the exporting of it, it will show their code at the beginning, because that is immensely helpful as well. So you have called line, paraphrase, substitute, transposed, all of that. I typically don't do mispronounced myself because I don't feel like that's much of a stage manager thing to do unless it's like a hugely glaring mispronounce. Like it has to be a big mistake there. So here's that. The good thing also with this system is if that character or person wasn't put in for a line note, a PDF wasn't even generated for them because they didn't need it. And that's how that was set up. But I had a lot of help with that in that it was someone else who could expand on that. And often with the line note system that I would do, that I've been doing for like 6 years now, I would keep the line notes in pencil in my scripts until they would correct it in a run situation. So I knew like where their progress was, and they did as well. I can share that with you. Let me figure out how, but yeah. Or if you will actually get in contact with me and I can share that, just send me an email, because I think that's the easiest way I can do it. And I will put my email in the chat. Another thing I personally do beyond paperwork as a stage manager is if I'm running lines with someone, I typically have a decent memory if like we're learning a section, even though I don't write what they said that was different, I can typically remember the gist of what they said that was different to reinforce that if we're working one-on-one to move away from it. But as a general rule, I do not in my paperwork. And those are the two that I'm just going to share. A lot of my others are pretty similar.
I had one more thing I wanted to share. So when I was working at the Flea Theater in Tribeca several years ago now, their bat company liked to keep track of their props and make their own paperwork. So they're actors. And this year when I did the show at the bar, they had to keep track of their own props and costumes. So I just made kind of, didn't steal, but remembered from what the bat company did and brought it to Brooklyn with me. Am I able to screen share? I think, right?
Yeah. Oh, I have to share back.
This will only take about a minute, but something
Go for
easy.
it.
Thank you. Something easy and simple to digest for when you have to make it specifically for actors. And it is going to look very simple. So just I sometimes combine proper costume if it's a small cast or they don't have too many things, but very simple. You got your prop, your location, what it is, their name, their character. He only had one costume, this actor, just a black hat. Again, the version and the date. Page number, if it's more than one page, that helps too. And I also, that is something I took from the Bat Company. They do little checks. I think it was kind of cute. It helps. They like to do it. You know, puts a little smile on their face, helps them keep track. But that is just that last piece of paperwork I wanted to share with everyone. Anyone have any questions? Turn your cameras on if you want to.
And mics, that would probably help if you want to ask any questions.
Okay, I just assumed they knew the mics part, but yes, camera and mics.
But yeah, I will definitely email that or figure out how to share that because it is through Google Drive. It is specifically through that, so that's what makes me think that in turn worked with Google through there. So.
You should just be able to export it as a Word doc and PDF.
Probably, but it is a functionality through Gmail, unfortunately, I think.
Oh, okay.
It is. It's an extension through the Google Suite.
Ah, interesting. Okay. Also, something I want to say, anytime you are sharing your paperwork, unless your team has to edit it, like on the drive or something, PDF. Make it a PDF. It's just easier to open. No one can edit. Just always a PDF unless your team needs to make edits. No questions?
Well, okay, cool. Yeah, no problem, Andrew. I would say feel free to like contact us either through Facebook group or
I'll put our email in, our Gmail.
Or Gmail if you have any questions, even afterwards with things that you found interesting or you might have questions on or like something you remember, and we'll be happy to answer that. Besides that, I think we're actually at time, and we will see you all later. Not sure what our topic is next week, but we will broadcast that once we do.
Thank you for joining us.
Bye, all.
Good night.